On Christmas Day, my father chose another soldier over his own family. My father abandoned our family on Christmas Day. Not because of deployment, not because of military duty, but because he chose another woman over us. That choice destroyed my childhood. But 20 years later, I discovered something that destroyed his entire military career. This is the story of how I exposed a corruption network that reached the highest ranks of my battalion. And this is what happens when a daughter decides the truth matters more than loyalty to blood. If you believe in speaking up when it costs you everything, like and subscribe. This one hits different. Pause for impact. Before the betrayal. The family that looked perfect. My name is Sergeant Maya Lewis, and I grew up in a military family that looked perfect from the outside. My father was a decorated soldier, Master Sergeant rank, respected, trusted, the kind of man who wore his uniform like it was a second skin. My mother was his anchor, supportive, strong, the type of woman who stood by her man no matter what. And then there was me. I was their only child. Growing up in a military household meant moving every few years, never quite feeling settled but always understanding one thing: family comes first, duty comes second. My father used to tell me that. He used to say it while tucking me into bed at night, his military boots still on from a long day at the base. He'd promise me that no matter what happened in his career, no matter where the army sent him, our family would always be his priority. I believed him. Every kid believes their father. The perfect Christmas before everything changed. December 24th. The year I turned 9. This was before smartphones, before social media, before I understood that people could lie while looking you directly in the eyes. My mother had been planning Christmas dinner for weeks. She wasn't just cooking, she was creating. She made her famous banana bread from scratch, the one with brown sugar that melted on your tongue. She baked 3 types of pies, apple, pecan, and pumpkin, and his favorite, ginger cookies with crystallized ginger on top. She knew exactly how he liked them. The house smelled like cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla extract. Every room felt warm, every corner felt like home. My mother had me help decorate. We hung stockings by the fireplace, 3 of them. His, mine, hers. We set out Christmas lights on the front porch. We even left out cookies and milk for Santa, even though I was getting old enough to know the truth. That year, Christmas was everything. My mother kept saying, "Your father is going to love this dinner. I can't wait to see his face when he walks through that door." She was so happy, so full of anticipation. I remember looking at her and thinking, this is what love looks like. I didn't know yet that love wasn't always enough. The wait. Christmas Day came. We woke up early, opened presents. I got a new bicycle and some books I'd been asking for. My mother and I spent the morning prepping everything for dinner, setting the table, arranging flowers, making sure everything was perfect. By 3:00 p.m. the kitchen was a masterpiece of preparation. Roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, stuffing, everything my father could have wanted. My mother kept glancing at the clock. "What time did your father say he'd be here?" she asked me, checking her watch for the 100th time. "He said by dinner, around 6:00, I said. We waited. 6:00 came and went. No call, no text, no explanation, no apology. My mother's smile started to fade, but she kept it together. "He's probably just running late. You know how the base can be." 7:00 came, still nothing. By 8:00 p.m., the food was getting cold. My mother had already put it back in the oven twice to keep it warm. I could see the worry lines forming on her face. "Maybe he's on an emergency call," she said, more to herself than to me. I didn't know what to say. I was 9. I didn't understand that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. 10:00 p.m. My mother wasn't even pretending anymore. She sat on the couch, still in her nice dress, looking at all that food we'd prepared. She didn't cry, she just deflated. "Let's get you ready for bed," she said quietly. I could hear the disappointment in her voice, but worse, I could hear the realization, the moment when hope turned into understanding. The 6 words that broke everything. 11:53 p.m. We heard a car pull up outside. My mother's head snapped up. For just a moment, hope lit up her face again. She got up and walked to the window, peeling back the curtain. But it wasn't my father's car. It was our neighbor, the woman from 2 houses down. My mother went to the door. I could hear them talking quietly in the hallway. And then I heard 6 words that would change everything. "He's with another soldier tonight." I remember the silence that followed. It was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. My mother didn't scream, she didn't yell, she didn't even cry, at least not in front of me. She just closed the curtains. And she blew out the candles on the table. All of them. One by one. And as each flame disappeared, I felt something inside me disappear too. That was the night Christmas died for me. That was the night I learned that my father's promises didn't mean anything. That was the night I stopped being a daughter and started learning how to survive. Growing up without him. The years that followed weren't dramatic. There were no big fights, no custody battles, no screaming matches. It was worse than that, it was silence. My father came around sometimes, a birthday, a school event, but it never felt like he was coming home. It felt like he was visiting a past life he didn't really want anymore. When he did show up, he'd hug me and ask about school. He'd try to be present, but I could always feel him looking at his watch, thinking about somewhere else he needed to be. "I love you," he'd say when he left. "I'm proud of you." But words are easy, showing up is hard. And he kept choosing easy. My mother never said anything bad about him to me. That's the kind of woman she was, strong enough not to poison her daughter against her father, even when she had every right to. But I could see it in her eyes, the way she looked at the door on Christmas mornings, the way she'd pause when the phone rang, hoping it might be him. The way she'd realize again and again that it wasn't. The discovery that changed everything. I was 14. I was doing homework in my room when my mother called me to help her with something on the computer. She was trying to order something online, and technology wasn't her strong suit. While she was distracted, I noticed Facebook was already open in another tab. It was her account, but as I scrolled, I saw a name I recognized, my father. He'd commented on a photo. My curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on it. It was a photo from a Christmas dinner. There was my father, sitting at a table with a woman in a military uniform and 2 kids who weren't me. They were all in matching pajamas. There were stockings on the wall behind them with names written in cursive. His name was on one stocking. The other woman's name was on another. The 2 kids' names were on 2 others. But my name wasn't there. I could feel my heart rate increasing as I scrolled through more photos, photo after photo of them together. My father with his arm around this woman, my father with the kids, my father playing what looked like a happy family. A happy family that didn't include me. The worst part wasn't seeing the photos, the worst part was seeing the comments, happy birthday messages, anniversary wishes, friends commenting, "You two are perfect together," and "The kids are so lucky to have you." And there were hundreds of them, going back years. Years. While my mother was home, cooking his favorite meals on Christmas, my father was building a completely different life. A happy one. A real one. And he wasn't alone anymore. I printed out 3 of those photos. I don't know why, I guess I needed proof that I hadn't imagined it, that it was real. I kept them under my mattress for months. The decision that changed my life. That's when I made a decision. I wouldn't need him, I wouldn't wait for his calls, I wouldn't hope for his attention. I would become someone so strong, so accomplished, so undeniably impressive that I would never have to rely on a man who could so easily discard his own daughter. At 14, I joined J-Rotk at my school, Junior Rotk. My father asked me about it when he called a few weeks later. "Why are you doing that?" he asked, like he was confused, like he thought I was following in his footsteps to be like him. "Because," I said, "I don't need you to teach me about honor. I can learn it myself." I think that was the first time I realized that anger could be fuel, that betrayal could be a motivator, that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, its excellence. By the time I was 18, I'd joined the army full-time. By 24, I'd outranked my father. By 29, I'd achieved things in my career that he'd spent 30 years trying to achieve. And I had done it without him. I thought that would be enough. I thought if I could just get far enough away from him, build a big enough life, accomplish enough things, then maybe the childhood wound would stop hurting. I was wrong. The impossible collision. When the universe plays a cruel joke. After my transfer at 29, I was assigned to a new base. 3 states away. Or so I thought. The assignment seemed random. I'd requested a change of scenery and the army had granted it. New location, new unit, new beginning. The first day, I walked into battalion headquarters to meet my new commanding officer and get briefed on my new role in logistics. As I walked down the hallway, I saw a nameplate on one of the office doors. Master Sergeant Lewis. My stomach dropped. I told myself it was a common name. There were probably dozens of Master Sergeant Lewises in the army. It didn't have to be him. But something in my gut knew. I knocked on the door. A voice from inside said, "Come in." And when that door opened, time did something weird. It froze and accelerated at the same time. My father stood up from behind his desk. Master Sergeant James Lewis, tall, still fit, still in uniform, still looking like the man who'd abandoned us on Christmas Day, except now he was older, his hair was grayer, and he was wearing the same unit patch that I was wearing. He froze when he saw me. "Maya," he said, like he wasn't sure if I was real. "Sergeant Lewis," I responded, keeping it professional, keeping it distant. He walked around his desk and tried to hug me. I stepped back. "Sir," I said formally, "I wasn't aware you were stationed at this base." I could see the hurt flash across his face when I called him sir. 9 years, it had been 9 years since we'd spoken. 9 years of silence. 9 years of him building that other life while I was trying to forget he existed. And now we were in the same battalion, same chain of command, same building. He said something about fate, about how the universe had a funny way of bringing people together, about how maybe it was time we talked about what happened. I didn't respond to that. "I'll be professional," I told him, "but that's all this will be." And I left his office. The pretense of normal. For the next few weeks we tried to maintain a professional relationship. It was awkward, it was uncomfortable, but it worked. I'd run into him in the hallways, we'd nod, we'd exchange pleasantries about work. Sometimes he'd try to extend a conversation and I'd politely excuse myself. I didn't hate him anymore, I'd moved past hatred a long time ago. But I also didn't forgive him. Forgiveness felt like erasing what he'd done, and I wasn't ready to do that. What I didn't know was that being near him again had already started something that would unravel everything. The woman who looked familiar. 3 weeks after starting at the new base, I was in a briefing when she walked in. Staff Sergeant Tessa Quinn. She was everything I said she'd be, sharp, confident, commanding, the kind of woman who walked into a room and owned it. She had short dark hair, a strong jaw, and eyes that seemed to calculate every person she looked at. She was also the woman from those Christmas photos. The woman my father had chosen over his family. I didn't recognize her at first, it had been 15 years, but when she saw me something flickered across her face. Recognition, uncertainty, maybe guilt. The first words out of her mouth were, "Oh, you're that Maya." I felt my stomach twist into a knot. She said it with ease, like she'd been rehearsing this moment for years, like she'd prepared for a day when she might actually meet the daughter of the man she'd stolen. "Staff Sergeant Quinn," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I didn't realize you were stationed here," she said. "Your father mentioned having a daughter, but—" "He did," I interrupted, surprised that he'd mentioned me at all. She smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something you didn't, who had power you didn't expect her to have. "All the time," she said. "He's very proud of you." The way she said it made my skin crawl. It wasn't kind. It was condescending. It was the way you talked to someone you pitied. After the briefing, I sat in my office and tried to process what I'd just realized. My father and Tessa Quinn were still in contact, they were still close, and apparently she knew things about me. Things he'd told her. The sabotage begins when she started making moves. It started small. Paperwork would go missing, inventory reports would be delayed, access logs would get misplaced. As the logistics coordinator, these problems became my problems, my responsibility, my failure. Sergeant Lewis, my commander, would say, "We need to talk about these delays." I'd look into it and find that the paperwork had been processed incorrectly, but not by me. The inventory had been miscalculated, but not by me. The access logs had been entered wrong, but not by me. Every time I traced the error back to its source, it led to Tessa Quinn. But here's the thing about military hierarchies. If you accuse someone of deliberately sabotaging your work, you need proof, real proof, not just a suspicion. Tessa knew this. She was smart about it. She'd make mistakes that looked accidental. She'd handle paperwork in ways that seemed careless rather than malicious. She'd smile and apologize and ask me to help her fix things. To anyone watching, it looked like she was just struggling with the job. To me, it looked like a calculated campaign. The rumor campaigns. But the paperwork issues were just the beginning. Around the same time, rumors started circulating about me. Maya has anger management issues. She's difficult to work with. She's kind of unstable. I heard she had a breakdown in the bathroom last week. People would tell me these things tentatively, like they were doing me a favor by letting me know what people were saying. But I'd never done any of these things. I'd never been difficult. I'd never had a breakdown. I was starting to realize what was happening. Tessa wasn't just making mistakes. She was actively trying to destroy my reputation. And my father was her partner in it. I found out when I overheard them talking in the courtyard one afternoon. I'd gone outside to get some air, and I was walking around the side of the building when I heard voices I recognized. 2 people, one male, one female. My father and Tessa. They were standing near the parking lot, partially hidden from view. I should have kept walking. I should have pretended I didn't hear them. But I stopped. "She's going to be a problem," Tessa was saying. "How bad?" my father asked. "Bad enough that she might figure things out. We need to make sure she's too busy dealing with her own reputation to pay attention to what we're doing." My father was quiet for a moment. "I'll talk to her he finally said. "I can make sure she doesn't get that promotion she's been eyeing. Tell her she's not ready for leadership." "That would help," Tessa said. "The last thing we need is her in a position to see the access logs." They stopped talking after that. I'd heard enough. For the first time I understood. This wasn't just my father being an absent parent. This wasn't just Tessa being difficult. This was coordinated. This was intentional. And it was about covering something up. The frame job. 2 weeks later, I was called into my commanding officer's office. The look on his face told me this wasn't a casual meeting. "Sergeant Lewis, you're being recommended for a misconduct review," he said. My heart stopped. "For what, sir?" "Missing equipment, a case of computer supplies worth approximately $8,000, an inventory sheet with your name on it showing the equipment was received and stored in the secure locker, but no one can find the equipment, and the paperwork showing it was released is also missing." "I never received any such equipment, sir," I said immediately. "The signature on the intake form is yours." "It's not my signature, sir." He pulled out the paperwork, and I could see immediately why he thought it was my signature. Someone had done a careful job of forging it. It was close enough to my real signature that someone casually reviewing it would think it was legitimate. But it wasn't. "There's more," my co-continued. "Access logs show that someone used your key card to enter the secure locker at 2:47 a.m. on the night the equipment went missing." "That's impossible. I wasn't here at 2:47 a.m., sir." "Where were you?" I tried to think back. I couldn't even remember. It had been weeks ago. How was I supposed to account for my whereabouts in the middle of a random night? "I was at home, sir. I'm usually in bed by midnight." "Alone?" "Yes, sir, I live alone." He nodded like he'd expected that answer. Your father came to me, he said. He expressed concern about your behavior. He said you've been displaying signs of instability, that you've been acting erratic, that he's worried you might be having difficulties. Everything went cold. What did he say, sir? That you might have personal issues affecting your judgment, that he wouldn't be surprised if you were having financial problems, that some people turn to theft as a way of coping. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own father, sitting in this office, had told my commanding officer that I might be a thief, that I might be unstable, that I might be a problem. He was throwing me under the bus to protect Tessa Quinn, exactly like he'd thrown my mother under the bus on Christmas Day. History was repeating itself, but this time it would cost me my career. Following the evidence, when I decided to fight back, I could have accepted the misconduct review. I could have gone through the process, been cleared eventually when they couldn't find evidence, and let it blow over. But I was tired of letting him get away with things. I was tired of being the collateral damage in his life. I was tired of watching him destroy people and face no consequences. So I started digging. The paper trail. I didn't go to my I didn't make accusations without proof. I did what I'd been trained to do. I followed the evidence. I requested copies of all inventory records going back 6 months. I asked for every access log that involved my key card. I pulled up every piece of correspondence related to the missing equipment case. And then I started comparing. The forged signature on my intake sheet, I compared it to my real signatures in other documents. It was close but not perfect. The curves were slightly off. The pressure on the pen was different. Under a magnifying glass, any handwriting expert would see it immediately. It wasn't my signature. But whose was it? I compared it to other signatures in the system. It took me 3 days of careful analysis, but I found it. A match. The signature looked nearly identical to signatures from multiple other documents processed by Tessa Quinn. The access log that showed my key card entering the locker at 2:47 a.m., I pulled the full security footage from that night. And there on tape, I could see someone in a military uniform, taken from behind, using a key card to enter the building. The face was obscured by the angle of the camera, but the person was wearing a jacket with a staff sergeant rank insignia. Tessa was a staff sergeant. I was a sergeant, different ranks, different insignia. The jacket in the video matched her rank. The bigger picture. But it was when I started looking at the broader records that things really started to fall apart. I pulled up all the inventory anomalies from the past year. Cases of missing equipment, discrepancies in supply logs, requests that had been approved by my father but bypassed normal security procedures. I found documents where Tessa had requested access to controlled supplies, and in every single case my father had personally approved them, with notes saying things like, "Staff Sergeant Quinn is trustworthy, expedite this request, and I take full responsibility for this authorization." I started to see a pattern. I pulled up performance evaluations. My father had given Tessa perfect scores on evaluations where her actual work performance didn't match. He'd written things like exemplary judgment and outstanding leadership potential for someone who was making basic mistakes on inventory forms. And then I found the emails. Emails between my father and Tessa discussing how to handle various situations, how to manage supply requests without raising red flags, how to make sure certain paperwork disappeared when necessary. And emails about me. "I'll make sure Maya doesn't get promoted. She can't handle leadership. She's becoming a problem. Can you help me neutralize her? Her reputation is getting worse. Good, keep her distracted with her own issues." These weren't deleted emails. They were just archived in his email system, waiting to be found by someone who knew where to look. What I was really finding. I also found something else, evidence of misuse of military funds. Tessa had been processing supply requisitions for significantly more than what the unit actually needed. The orders were approved by my father. The supplies would arrive, get logged in by Tessa, and then they'd disappear from the inventory system. But they hadn't disappeared, they'd been sold. To private contractors, to local civilian companies, to anyone willing to buy military supplies at a discount. The money had been split between my father and Tessa. I found bank statements showing regular deposits into an account connected to her. I found references in emails to side income and supplemental revenue streams. It wasn't just negligence. It wasn't just him helping a colleague get ahead. It was full-scale corruption. Going to the Inspector General. I didn't go to my father. I didn't go to my commanding officer. I went directly to the Inspector General's office. The IG is the military equivalent of internal affairs. They investigate misconduct, corruption, and ethical violations within the armed forces. They report to the highest levels of command. And they take things seriously. I walked in with a folder containing everything I'd found: the forged signatures, the access logs, the fingerprint analysis on the missing equipment case. Yes, I'd gotten that done discreetly. The bank statements, the emails, the video footage, the performance evaluation anomalies, all of it. The investigator I met with was a colonel named Patricia Hayes. She listened to everything I said without interrupting. She reviewed every document. She took notes. When I finished, she looked at me over her glasses and said, "This is a serious accusation, Sergeant Lewis. Are you prepared for what happens next?" "Yes, ma'am," I said. "Your father's career," she said. "Staff Sergeant Quinn's future. Both of them are going to be implicated. Both of them are going to deny everything. And there's a possibility this could become public, which means your name will be out there too." "I understand, ma'am." "And you're still willing to do this?" "Yes, ma'am, I have to." She nodded. "Then let's get started." The investigation unfolds. What happened next was methodical, thorough, and devastating. The IG's office opened an official investigation. They interviewed 27 people connected to my father, Tessa, and the missing equipment case. They pulled security footage from 6 months of records. They analyzed handwriting on every disputed document. They conducted forensic accounting on the supply budget. They subpoenaed bank records. They obtained phone records. And everything I'd found was corroborated by trained investigators with access to resources I didn't have. My father was called in and questioned. He denied everything at first, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, said I had a personal vendetta, said I was unstable and couldn't be trusted. But when they presented him with the evidence, the emails with his name on them, the bank statements showing deposits to accounts connected to him, the video footage of someone wearing his rank insignia using equipment after hours, he broke. He admitted to it, not all of it, not at first, but eventually he admitted to everything. The investigation revealed that this had been going on for 3 years. 3 years of falsified records, misused funds, and system abuse. And Tessa had been doing most of the actual work, diverting supplies, selling them, documenting everything, while my father provided the protection and the authorization. The verdict. The investigation concluded that 1. Master Sergeant James Lewis had deliberately misused his authority to facilitate the theft and sale of military supplies. 2. Staff Sergeant Tessa Quinn had orchestrated a systematic scheme to divert military resources for personal profit. 3. Both had engaged in conspiracy to defraud the military. 4. My father had actively attempted to frame me for the missing equipment to divert attention from their activities. 5. Tessa had deliberately sabotaged my reputation and career as part of that cover-up effort. The recommendations were clear. The reckoning. Tessa Quinn was reduced in rank from staff sergeant to sergeant. She lost her security clearance, which meant she could no longer work in her specialty. She was reassigned to a clerical position, and her military career, which she'd built on theft and deception, was effectively over. My father was forced into early retirement. No ceremony, no honors, no recognition of his years of service. Just silence. And removal from the army he'd devoted his entire life to. I remember the day I heard the news. I was sitting in my office, and my co came in and told me the investigation was concluded, and I was completely cleared of all charges. I waited to feel happy, I waited to feel victorious. But I mostly just felt tired. Did I feel victorious? People have asked me since then whether I felt victorious, whether I felt like I'd won. The truth is more complicated than that. Yes, there was satisfaction in knowing that the truth came out. Yes, there was validation in being cleared of false accusations. Yes, there was something powerful in exposing a corruption network that had operated for years. But victorious, no. Because revenge doesn't heal childhood scars. Justice doesn't rebuild broken families. Exposure doesn't take back 20 years of abandonment and betrayal. All the evidence in the world can't replace the Christmas days he missed. All the court cases can't replace the homework he didn't help me with. All the guilty verdicts can't replace the sense of security I lost when I was 9 years old. My mother never remarried. She never let herself get close to another person after my father hurt her. She spent decades alone, working hard, keeping herself together, but also keeping herself closed off. I can't fix that by exposing him. Tessa Quinn's career is over, but my childhood is still broken. My father is retired early, but I still remember what it felt like to realize my father loved someone else more than me. What I got instead. But here's what I did get: closure. I got to know the truth, not the story he told himself, not the narrative he created to justify his choices, the actual, documented, undeniable truth. And I got to know that I had the strength to stand up, to speak up, to face him directly through that investigation and not back down. I got to know that sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything, and you do it anyway. I got to know that loyalty to family isn't the same as loyalty to the truth, and sometimes you have to choose truth. I am Sergeant Maya Lewis. My father chose another soldier over his family on Christmas Day. 20 years later, I chose truth. And I'd make that choice again. The truth isn't always healing. It doesn't wrap up neatly. It doesn't give you the ending you want. But it stops the lies from defining your future. It stops the corruption from continuing. It stops the cycle. What would you have done? Would you have exposed him, or would you have stayed silent to protect your family's image? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you believe that speaking up matters, even when it costs you everything, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.